Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku walked away from All Might. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky was the color of a fresh bruise, a swirling mix of violet and orange that bled into the encroaching gray of twilight. The air in Muzutafa's city usually tasted like ozone and exhaust, the scent of a society constantly activating its quirks. But today, for Izuku Midoriya, it tasted like sludge and smoke. His throat was raw. His uniform was stiff with dried muck. Every step he took on the pavement sent a dull throb through his legs, a reminder of the terror that had seized him only an hour ago. You moved without thinking. The thought replayed in his mind, looping like a broken record. He had run. He had thrown his backpack. He had clawed at the fluid, viscous body of a villain to save Katsuki Bakugo, a boy who had told him to take a swan dive off a roof earlier that same day. And what had it earned him? The pros had scolded him. That was reckless! You have a death wish, Katsuki had shouted at him. I didn't ask for your help, Deku, and All Might. Izuku stopped walking. He stared down at his red sneakers. The oversized shoes looked clownish against the gray concrete. All Might had saved them both. With a single smash, he had changed the weather and scattered the villain. He was the symbol of everything Izuku had ever wanted to be. But earlier, on that rooftop, the symbol of peace had looked him in the eye, his true, sunken, skeletal eyes, and delivered the verdict that had shattered Izuku's world. Without a quirk? No. I cannot simply say you can become a hero. Izuku let out a shaky breath, his hands curling into fists at his sides. The validation he had sought for 10 years had been denied by the one person whose opinion mattered. And yet, Izuku had still run into that fire. Why? Was it heroism? Or was it just the desperate flailing of a boy who didn't know how to exist if he wasn't chasing a ghost? He felt hollow. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a cold, biting reality. He was quirkless. He was useless. And tomorrow, he would wake up and be useless again. I am here, the voice boomed out of nowhere, vibrating in Izuku's chest. Izuku flinched, spinning around. From around the corner of a brick wall, All Might slid into view, striking a pose that belonged on a billboard. All Might? Izuku squeaked, the old reflex of fandom kicking in before his brain could catch up with his heart. Why are you here? You were surrounded by reporters. The hero laughed, a hearty, booming sound. Shaking them off is nothing to me. Why? Because I am All Might, Glurg. The transformation failed. In a burst of steam, the muscular titan vanished, replaced by the emaciated, sharp-angled man Izuku had met on the roof. He coughed violently, a spray of blood painting the pavement. Impulsive. The skeletal man wheezed, wiping his mouth. Izuku stared. A few hours ago, this sight had terrified him. Now, it just made him feel sad. The illusion was gone. Young man, All Might said, straightening up, though his posture remained hunched. I came here to thank you. And also to discuss what I said earlier. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't told me about your life, I would have turned into a guy in a bodysuit who was all talk. Thank you? Izuku looked down. It was my fault in the first place, he mumbled. I distracted you. I made you drop the bottle. That's true, All Might admitted, his voice serious. But that's not what matters. Of all the people on that scene, of all the pro heroes standing on the sidelines watching, it was you, the timid, quirkless boy, who acted. Izuku's head snapped up. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the nearby trees. All Might's blue eyes were piercing, burning with an intensity that felt heavy. Top heroes have stories about their school days, All Might continued, clutching his chest. Most of their stories have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they had a chance to think. Izuku's breath hitched. He knew where this was going. He could feel the narrative shifting, the music swelling in the background of his mind. This was the moment. The redemption. That was true for you, wasn't it? All Might asked softly. Yes, Izuku whispered, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. Don't cry. Don't you dare cry. You can become a hero. The words hung in the air. For a moment, the world stopped. The traffic noise faded. The wind died down. It was the sentence Izuku had waited his entire life to hear. It was the key to the lock on his heart. He fell to his knees, clutching his chest, the tears flowing freely now. But All Might wasn't finished. I deem you worthy of inheriting my power. Izuku froze. The tears stopped midstream. He blinked, looking up through blurred vision. Huh! All Might laughed, confused by the reaction. What's with that face? It's a proposal. The real work begins now. Listen, my boy. My quirk is a sacred torch passed down from generation to generation. I have the ability to transfer power. And now, I want to give it to you. Izuku slowly stood up. The concrete felt hard under his knees as he pushed himself upright. He wiped his face with his sleeve, smearing soot and tears. Inherit your power? Izuku repeated slowly. Yes. One for all. All Might spread his skeletal arms wide. With this, you will gain a massive stockpile of power. You will be able to smash villains and save lives, just like me. You face fear when others froze. You have the heart of a hero. Now you just need the fist. Izuku looked at All Might's hand. It was open, inviting. A quirk. The greatest quirk in existence. He could have it. He could be just like All Might. He could go to UA, smash the robots, shut Kaken up, and make his mother smile without that look of apology in her eyes. It was everything he wanted. It was the happy ending. Without a quirk? No. I cannot simply say you can become a hero. The memory of the rooftop slashed through the fantasy like a guillotine. Izuku felt a chill settle in his stomach. It wasn't fear. It was something colder. Something harder. Wait, Izuku said. His voice was quiet. All Might paused. Wait. I know it's a lot to take in, but you said I couldn't be a hero, Izuku interrupted. He wasn't shouting. He sounded detached, analytical. On the roof. You said I should be a police officer. You said I had to be realistic. I did. All Might nodded solemnly. And I was wrong. You proved me wrong by acting, did I? Izuku took a step back. I didn't save anyone, All Might. I just got in the way. I threw a bag. I clawed at sludge. If you hadn't shown up, I would have died, and Kaken would have died. But the spirit, if I take your power, Izuku cut him off again, looking directly into the sunken eyes of his idol, then the only reason I become a hero is because of your power. Not me. You. All Might lowered his hands. Young Midoriya, quirkless heroes are, the reality is harsh. The police force is noble, but the symbol of peace requires power. I am offering you the means to fulfill your dream. You're offering me a handout, Izuku said, the realization crystallizing in his mind. The heat of the moment, the desperation on the street, it had faded. Now, Izuku's mind, the mind that had filled 13 notebooks with analysis, was taking over. If I accept this, Izuku continued, his voice trembling slightly, then I am admitting that you were right on the roof. I'm admitting that Izuku Midoriya is worthless. That I'm just a vessel. That the only way I can have value is if I become a copy of you. All Might looked stunned. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I've spent my whole life being told I'm nothing, Izuku said, gripping the strap of his yellow backpack until his knuckles turned white. Kaken says it. My teachers say it. Even my mom, she just cries. He looked down at his hands. They were scarred from notebook burns and calloused from nervous wringing. If I take one for all, I'll never know if I was good enough. I'll just be the guy who won the lottery. Izuku looked up. His green eyes, usually shimmering with tears, were dry. They burned with a strange, terrifying light. It was the look of a boy who had been pushed to the edge of a cliff and decided to build wings instead of waiting for a savior to catch him. I don't want your power, All Might. The silence that followed was heavier than the buildings surrounding them. A stray cat knocked over a can in an alleyway, the clatter echoing loudly. All Might took a step back, genuinely rocked. Young man, do you understand what you are turning down? This is the power to save the world. Then give it to someone who needs a quirk to be a hero, Izuku said softly. Give it to someone strong. Someone like Togata from UA or anyone else. But you, All Might pressed, desperation leaking into his voice. You have the heart. Then the heart should be enough. Izuku snapped. The outburst surprised both of them. He breathed heavily, his chest heaving. If the heart is enough, then I don't need the power. And if the heart isn't enough, then I'll find another way. I have to find another way. Because if I take yours, I erase myself. Izuku bowed. It was a perfect, respectful, 90-degree bow. Thank you for saving my life, All Might. And thank you for saving Kaken. You really are the coolest hero. He straightened up, adjusted his backpack, and turned around. Young Midoriya! All Might called out. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't look back. He kept walking into the deepening shadows of the street, leaving the greatest hero in the world standing alone under the flickering streetlights, holding a strand of golden hair that no one wanted. The walk home was a blur. Izuku's mind felt like it was dissociating. Had he really just done that? Had he really just looked the number one hero in the eye and said no? I'm an idiot, a part of him screamed. I'm a moron. I just threw away my only chance. I'm going to be a nobody forever. But beneath the panic, there was something else. A strange, vibrating hum in his bones. It was the feeling of agency. For the first time in his life, he hadn't just reacted to the world. He had acted upon it. He had made a choice that defined him, not as a victim, but as a person. He reached his apartment complex. The stairs felt endless. When he opened the door, the smell of cooking fish hit him. Izuku, his mother Inko, came rushing down the hallway. Her eyes were swollen red. She must have seen the news. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. She threw her arms around him, pulling him into a suffocating hug. She was crying so hard she was practically vibrating. I saw the news. The sludge villain. You were there. Were you hurt? Why did you do that? I was so scared. I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said, patting her back awkwardly. I'm okay. The heroes saved me. You shouldn't have been there. It's too dangerous. She pulled back, cupping his face. My baby. You could have died. But I didn't, Izuku said quietly. Inko sniffled, wiping her eyes. Go wash up. You smell like sewage. I made your favorite. Katsudon. Thanks, Mom. Dinner was a quiet affair. Inko kept glancing at him nervously, as if expecting him to shatter into a million pieces. Izuku ate mechanically. The savory pork and egg usually brought him joy, but tonight it tasted like ash. Izuku? Inko asked tentatively. Are you okay? Izuku paused, his chopsticks hovering over the bowl. Mom. Yes? Do you think I can be a hero? Inko froze. Her eyes welled up again. It was the same reaction as that night 10 years ago. The hesitation. The heartbreak. Izuku, she whispered. I just want you to be happy. And safe. It wasn't a yes. Izuku nodded slowly. He didn't cry this time. He just felt that cold resolve harden in his gut, like iron cooling in a mold. I'm going to my room. His room was a shrine. Every inch of wall space was covered in posters. All Might, the Golden Age. All Might, Silver Age variant. All Might, 10th Anniversary Special Edition. Shelves lined the walls, packed with action figures. Limited edition statues. Signed memorabilia. Bedsheets, rugs, even the clock on his desk. Everything was All Might. The smiling face of the symbol of peace beamed down at him from 1,000 different angles. Usually, this room felt like a sanctuary. A place where he could dream. Tonight, it felt like a tomb. It felt like a room belonging to a child who didn't understand how the world worked. It was a room dedicated to a man who had told him to give up, and then offered him a pity prize because he felt guilty. Izuku stood in the center of the room, the silence pressing in on him. I'm admitting that Izuku Midoriya is worthless. He walked over to the wall closest to his bed. He reached up and grabbed the corner of the All Might, Bronze Age poster. It was vintage. Mint condition. Worth a small fortune online. He ripped it down. The sound of the paper tearing was shockingly loud. Izuku stared at the blank patch of wall. It looked naked. It looked clean. He moved to the next one. Ripe. Then the next. He grabbed a cardboard box from his closet. He started sweeping the action figures off the shelves. The plastic clack of heroes hitting the bottom of the box sounded like hail. He wasn't doing it out of anger. He wasn't mad at All Might. All Might was a good person. He was a great hero. But he was also a crutch. I can't be you, Izuku whispered to the plastic figure in his hand, the classic pose, fists raised to the sky. And I don't want to be you anymore. He dropped the figure into the box. He worked for hours. He stripped the bedsheets. He rolled up the rug. He took down the limited edition clock. By midnight, the room was unrecognizable. The walls were bare, revealing the pale cream paint that hadn't seen light in years. The shelves were empty. The desk was clear, save for a lamp and a stack of burnt notebooks. The room felt bigger. It echoed. Izuku sat at his desk. He looked at the stack of notebooks. Hero analysis for the future. Numbers 1 through 13. Number 13 was charred and waterlogged, courtesy of Kaken and the koi pond. Izuku picked it up. The pages were crinkled, the ink running. It smelled of burnt sugar. He opened it to the last entry. Mount Lady. Kamui Woods. The strategy notes were simplistic. Gigantification is strong against physical barriers. Wood binding is weak to fire. It was fanboy rambling. It was observation, yes, but it was passive. It was written by someone watching from the sidelines, eating popcorn. Izuku opened his drawer and pulled out a fresh notebook. He had bought it a week ago, saving it for a special occasion. The cover was plain black. He picked up a pen. He hovered over the cover. Usually, he would write hero analysis for the future number 14. He hesitated. Future, he muttered. The future isn't about watching heroes. It's about beating villains. He wrote, Hero-Villain Analysis number 14. And underneath, in bold, sharp strokes, counter-strategies and weakness exploitation. He opened to the first page. Subject, the sludge villain. Quirk, fluid body/sludge manipulation. Incident analysis. Physical attacks are ineffective. All Might's wind pressure worked because it scattered the mass, preventing cohesion. Without wind pressure, how do you win? Izuku closed his eyes. He visualized the alleyway. The smell. The texture of the slime. Hypothesis 1. Absorbance. If the fluid body is liquid-based, industrial absorbance or desiccants could solidify the mass, reducing mobility. Similar to how cat litter works on oil spills. Hypothesis 2. Thermal shock. Flash freezing. Liquid nitrogen. If the viscosity increases, he can't move. Alternatively, extreme heat might evaporate the moisture, but high risk of collateral damage to the hostage. Hypothesis 3. Cohesion disruption. Sonic frequencies? If the sludge is a suspension, a specific resonance frequency might destabilize the bonds holding it together. Izuku's hand flew across the page. He wasn't drawing a cool picture of the villain this time. He was drawing diagrams. Angles of attack. Chemical formulas he remembered from science class. He stopped. He looked at the page. It was a plan. A solid plan. If he had a canister of liquid nitrogen or a sonic emitter today, he wouldn't have needed to claw at the sludge. He could have ended the fight. But he didn't have those things. And even if he did, he didn't have the speed to deploy them. He didn't have the reflexes to dodge the villain's counterattacks. He looked down at his own body. Skinny. Weak. Arms like noodles. His brain could come up with a plan, but his body couldn't execute it. I need to be faster, he whispered. I need to be stronger. Not All Might strong. Just strong enough to carry the tools. He turned the page. Goal, UA High School entrance exam. Time remaining, 10 months. Obstacle, no quirk. Solution, weapons? Support items? He paused. UA's entrance exam was notoriously biased toward combat quirks. Robots. Giant robots. How do you kill a giant robot with your bare hands? You don't. You hack it. You trip it. You jam its gears. You blow it up from the inside. Izuku stood up. He walked to his window and opened it. The night air was cool. He looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping, trusting that All Might would save them. Somewhere, Kaken was probably yelling at a wall. Izuku felt a strange sense of vertigo. He had walked away from God. He was alone. I'm going to show them, he said to the empty air. I'm going to show All Might. I'm going to show Kaken. I don't need a quirk. I just need to be smarter. I need to be better. He looked at the reflection in the window glass. The boy staring back didn't look like a hero yet. He looked tired and small, but for the first time, his eyes weren't looking for someone else to save him. The next morning, Aldera Junior High was a cesspool of mediocrity, and today, the buzz was all about the sludge incident. Did you see the news? All Might was amazing. Wait, wasn't Bakugo the hostage? Izuku walked into the classroom with his head down, but his back straight. He went to his desk. Deku! The explosion popped against his desk before he even sat down. Smoke curled up, smelling of caramel and nitroglycerin. Katsuki Bakugo loomed over him, his face a mask of fury. His uniform was perfectly pressed, but his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept. We need to talk, Bakugo growled. The class went silent. Usually, this was the part where Bakugo mocked Izuku, and Izuku cowered. Izuku looked up. He didn't flinch. Good morning, Kaken, Bakugo twitched. Don't give me that crap. I saw you. After the pros chewed us out. All Might chased you down. I saw him corner you in the alley. A murmur went through the class. All Might talked to Deku? What did he say to you? Bakugo hissed, leaning in close. Sparks danced on his palms. Did he pity you? Did he tell you to stop being a suicidally reckless nerd? Did he tell you to stay out of my way? Izuku looked at Bakugo. Really looked at him. For years, Bakugo had been the definition of strength to Izuku. Explosive power. Natural talent. The arrogance that came with being chosen by genetics. But now, Izuku saw the fear in Bakugo's eyes. The insecurity. Bakugo had been saved by the quirkless kid, and it was eating him alive. He told me to be realistic, Izuku said calmly. Bakugo blinked. The sparks died down. Ha! See? Even the number one hero knows you're trash. He told me to be realistic, Izuku repeated, standing up. He was shorter than Bakugo, but he didn't slouch. So I'm going to be. Realistically, Kaken, you would have died yesterday if I hadn't moved. Your quirk is powerful, but it makes so much smoke that you couldn't see the villain's real body. You were flailing. The silence in the room was absolute. It was suffocating. No one spoke to Bakugo like that. Bakugo's face went from shock to a shade of red that defied physics. What did you say, you damn nerd? I'm saying your strategy was flawed, Izuku said, picking up his bag. You rely too much on brute force. If you had focused your explosions downward to create an air pocket, you could have breathed. Instead, you panicked. Bakugo raised a hand, a massive explosion ready to blow Izuku's face off. Katsuki! Midoriya! Sit down! The teacher yelled from the doorway. Bakugo froze. He lowered his hand, shaking with rage. You're dead, Deku. You hear me? You think you're better than me just because you did one stupid thing? You're still a pebble on the side of the road. Maybe, Izuku murmured, sitting down and opening his black notebook. But pebbles can jam gears. He didn't pay attention to the rest of the class. He was sketching a design for a grapple hook. 1 week later, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard. It used to be a beautiful coastline, a place for couples and joggers. Now, it was a mountain of trash. Drifting debris from the ocean currents accumulated here, and locals had used it as an illegal dumping ground for decades. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, scrap metal. It was a monument to apathy. It was also perfect. Izuku stood at the top of the concrete stairs, looking down at the wasteland. The smell was horrendous, rotting seaweed and rust. 10 months, he said, checking his watch. He wore a green tracksuit he had bought from a discount store. He had thick work gloves on his hands and a pair of goggles around his neck. Most people would look at this mess and see garbage. Izuku saw resources. He walked down the stairs, navigating through a maze of old tires. He stopped in front of a rusted pickup truck that was half buried in the sand. He couldn't move the truck. Not yet. He moved to a pile of scrap metal. He began sorting. Aluminum. Steel. Copper wiring. He wasn't just here to clean. He was here to scavenge. If I can have a quirk, Izuku muttered, grunting as he dragged a heavy car door across the sand. I'll build one. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed. He had no trainer. He had no diet plan designed by a pro. He had the internet, his notebooks, and a desperate, gnawing need to prove his existence. He spent 3 hours dragging scrap into piles. By the time the sun began to set, he was exhausted. He collapsed onto a relatively clean patch of sand, staring up at the orange sky. It's not enough, he panted. I need to learn how to fight. I need to learn engineering. He sat up. He pulled a small book out of his pocket. Basic Mechanics and Circuitry. He had checked it out from the library. He began to read. As he read, he heard footsteps. Izuku tensed, looking up. Was it a cop? Was he trespassing? A small, mouse-like figure. Wait, no. It was just a stray dog. A scruffy, ugly thing with one ear. It sniffed at his shoe. Izuku sighed, relaxing. Hey there. He looked back at the trash. I'm going to clear this whole beach, he told the dog. And with the parts one find. I'm going to make something that can fly. The dog barked. Izuku smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but it was real. 3 months later, the change was subtle at first. His shirts fit a little tighter around the shoulders. His hands were rougher, covered in small cuts and oil stains that never quite washed out. He stopped mumbling as much in class. He listened more. Izuku stood in the back of a bustling electronics shop in the Akihabara district. It was a paradise for hobbyists. Walls of servos, microcontrollers, gyroscopes, and capacitors. You're back again, kid? The old man behind the counter grunted. He was smoking a pipe that smelled like cherries. I need a high-torque servo, Izuku said, placing a basket of parts on the counter. And a lithium polymer battery pack. High discharge. The old man raised an eyebrow. Building a drone? Something like that, Izuku said evasively. That's a lot of power for a drone. You act like you're trying to build a suit of armor. Izuku froze. The old man laughed. Relax. I don't care what you build, as long as you don't blow up my shop. That'll be 4,500 yen. Izuku paid with the money he had earned from doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. He carefully packed the parts into his bag. As he walked out, he bumped into someone. Oof. Hey, watch your I see you have good taste in actuators. Izuku looked down. A girl with pink dreadlocks and strange, crosshair-like eyes was staring at his bag. She was wearing grease-stained overalls and goggles. Sorry? Izuku stammered. That servo. She pointed. The T400 series. Nice torque, terrible heat dissipation. Unless you modify the casing, it's gonna melt in like 5 minutes of continuous use. Izuku blinked. I was planning to use a heatsink. Aluminum mesh. The girl's eyes widened. She grinned, a manic, terrifying expression. Oh ho! A heat sink. Smart. But have you considered liquid cooling? I'm working on a baby right now that uses hydraulic fluid for both movement and cooling. It's brilliant, right? That sounds heavy, Izuku critiqued, his analysis brain taking over. Hydraulics are slow. For rapid movement, pneumatics or electric muscle fibers are better, the girl gasped. She grabbed Izuku's shoulders. You get it. You get it. Everyone tells me Hatsum, that's too dangerous, or Hatsum, why did it explode? But you understand the trade-offs. I guess, I'm Mei Hatsum, future CEO of Hatsum Industries. What's your name, servo boy? Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. Well, Izuku, if you ever want to see some real babies, come by the UA support workshop next year. I'm totally getting in. She released him and dashed into the store, screaming at the old man about capacitors. Izuku stood on the sidewalk stunned. UA support workshop. He looked at his hands. He looked at the bag of parts. He had applied for the hero course. Everyone knew that. The mock exams were coming up. But the written exam also covered general sciences. He thought about the robot. The giant zero-point villain bot that rumors said crushed students. Pneumatics are faster than hydraulics. A slow grin spread across his face. I don't need a quirk, he whispered. I need a jetpack. 10 months later, the morning of the exam, the beach was gone. In its place was a pristine stretch of golden sand, sparkling under the morning sun. The ocean waves lapped gently against the shore, no longer obstructed by tires and trash. At the top of the stairs, Izuku Midoriya stood shirtless, screaming at the sky. He was unrecognizable from the boy of 10 months ago. He wasn't bulky, he didn't have the frame for it, but he was cut from wire and steel. Every muscle was defined, taut like a bowstring. Scars littered his arms and hands, marks of soldering iron burns and slipped screwdrivers. He sat on top of the last pile of trash, a neatly stacked pyramid of scrap metal that he had set aside for his projects. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had done it. He had cleared the beach, but unlike in another timeline, no All Might appeared to congratulate him. No hair was eaten. Izuku hopped down from the pile. He walked over to his backpack and pulled out a water bottle. He chugged it, crushing the plastic in his hand. He put on a black t-shirt. He pulled on a utility belt he had stitched himself. It was empty now, but soon it would be full. He picked up his bag. It was heavy. Clanking heavy. Inside were flash grenades made from magnesium shavings. A grappling hook launcher powered by compressed CO2 cartridges scavenged from soda machines. Smoke pellets. A collapsible bow staff made from a reinforced alloy he had found in a car chassis. None of it was illegal, technically. They were tools. He checked his phone. It was 7 a.m. The UA entrance exam started at 9 o'clock. He walked home to shower. When he stepped out of his house an hour later, wearing his middle school uniform, Inko was waiting at the door. She straightened his collar. She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the calluses on his hands. She saw the dangerous intelligence in his eyes. You've changed, she said softly. I had to, Izuku replied. You're not bringing dangerous things, are you? Just tools, Mom, she sighed. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small charm. An omamori for protection. Good luck, Izuku. Be safe. I will. He walked to the train station. When he arrived at the massive glass gates of UA High, he felt a wave of nausea. This was it. The precipice. Stupid Deku. Bakugo walked past him, bumping his shoulder. Bakugo looked focused, intense. He didn't scream this time. He just glared. Don't die, Bakugo muttered as he walked past. I don't plan to, Izuku replied. He took a step forward. He tripped. Whoa! He flailed, waiting for the impact of the pavement. It never came. He was floating. Are you okay? A bubbly voice. Izuku looked around. A girl with a round face and brown hair had touched him. He was hovering 2 inches off the ground. It's my quirk, she said, tapping her fingertips together. Sorry for using it on you without asking. But it's bad luck to trip, right? She released him, and he landed softly. Thanks, Izuku stammered. Old habits died hard. A girl was talking to him. I'm Uraraka. Let's do our best. She pumped a fist and ran inside. Izuku watched her go. Gravity manipulation. Zero gravity. If she touches a robot, its mass becomes negligible. She can destroy them by dropping them, or throwing them. He clenched his fist. I can't do that. But I can trip them. He walked into the orientation hall. President Mike was screaming on stage. The explanation of the robots. The point system. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and engines in his calves stood up. Tenya Ida? May I ask a question? He pointed at the handout. There are 4 types of villains listed, but you only mentioned 3. If this is an error, it is shameful for UA. And you, Ida spun around and pointed a rigid finger directly at Izuku. You with the curly hair. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to play tourist, leave. Every eye in the auditorium turned to Izuku. In the past, Izuku would have shrunk. He would have apologized. Izuku stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I was muttering, Izuku said, his voice projecting clearly, about the structural weaknesses of a zero-pointer based on the silhouette, and calculating the probable blast radius of the 3-pointers missiles to ensure safe evacuation distances. Ida blinked. The auditorium went silent. If that distracts you, Izuku continued, his eyes cold, then you should work on your focus. The villains won't be quiet for you. He sat down. President Mike cleared his throat awkwardly. Alright. Okay. Dig the vibe. But the examinee is right. Let's move on. Battle Center B. The gates were massive. The crowd of examinees was tense. Izuku stood near the back. He was tightening the straps on his leg braces, homemade supports to help with landing impacts. He checked his pockets. Flashbangs, check. Smoke, check. Grapple, check. Start. President Mick's voice blared over the speakers. There are no countdowns in real life. Go! 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 The crowd hesitated. Izuku didn't. He bolted. He wasn't the fastest runner, but he was off the blocks instantly. He ran into the fake city. A one-pointer, a robot the size of a car, rolled out from an alley. Target acquired. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't punch. He reached into his belt and pulled out a small metal canister. He slid. As he slid under the robot's raised arm, he slapped the canister onto the exposed knee joint. Magnetic adhesion. He rolled away. Boom. It wasn't a massive explosion. It was a shaped charge, tiny but directed. It shattered the hydraulic piston in the knee. The robot toppled over, crashing into a wall. Izuku didn't look back. Mobility kill. 1 point. He kept running. A 3-pointer appeared. A massive missile launcher. Izuku aimed his wrist. Grapple. The hook shot out, wrapping around a lamppost on the second floor of a building. The winch whirred, screaming as it yanked him into the air. The missile fired where he had been standing a second ago. Izuku swung through the air. He wasn't flying like All Might. He was swinging like a pendulum. He landed on the robot's shoulders. Optical sensors are usually the weakest glass, he muttered. He jammed his metal bow staff directly into the robot's red-eye lens. He leveraged it, smashing the circuitry behind the eye. The robot spasmed and shut down. 4 points. He was breathing hard. This was exhilarating. This was terrifying. He wasn't the strongest. Bakugo was blowing up whole streets nearby. But Izuku was a ghost. He was sabotaging. He was tripping. He was blinding. 15 minutes passed. Izuku had 28 points. It wasn't amazing. But it was passing. Then, the ground shook. The 0-pointer. It rose over the buildings like a god of destruction. It was huge. Impossible. Debris rained down. Dust choked the air. The other examinees were running. Run! It's worth 0 points. Izuku turned to run. It was the logical choice. Survival. Ouch. A voice. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Uraraka was trapped under a slab of concrete. The 0-pointer was looming over her, its massive tracks crushing the pavement as it approached. Izuku's brain did the math. Distance, 40 meters. Robot speed, 5 meters per second. Time to impact, 8 seconds. My tools, 1 flashbang. 2 smoke pellets. The grapple. The staff. He had no explosives left. He had no super strength. If he ran, he lived. She might die, or the teachers would intervene. Top heroes have stories about their bodies moving before they could think. Izuku smiled. It was a feral, terrified grin. Screw logic, he hissed. He sprinted toward the robot. Hey! Kid! Don't! Someone screamed. Izuku ignored them. He tapped his headset, a scavenged radio. He realized it wasn't connected to anything. He was just talking to himself. Weakness analysis. 0-pointer. Too big. Top heavy. Center of gravity is high. He reached the rubble. He didn't try to lift the rock. He wasn't strong enough. He looked at Uraraka. Cover your ears. What? Izuku pulled the pin on his last flashbang and threw it, not at the robot, but at the robot's camera array on its chest. Bang! A blinding white light. The robot's sensors flared. It hesitated, its systems recalibrating. 2 seconds bought. Izuku aimed his grapple at the robot's neck. The hook caught. He hit the retract button. He flew up toward the massive machine. What is he doing? Ida yelled from the safety of the exit. Izuku landed on the collarbone of the giant. He was an ant on a titan. He saw the wiring. Thick cables running into the neck joint. He pulled out his bow staff. He jammed it into the gap between the rotating gears of the neck. Jam! He screamed, putting his entire body weight onto the lever. The gears ground against the metal alloy of the staff. Sparks showered over him, burning his skin. The staff began to bend. Come on! Izuku roared. Break! The robot tried to turn its head. The staff wedged deeper. Crunch! A massive gear shattered. The chain reaction was instantaneous. The neck mechanism seized. The robot, which had been leaning forward to crush the ground, lost its equilibrium. It lurched. It stalled. And then, with a groan of twisting metal, it tipped sideways. It didn't fall on Uraraka. It crashed into the adjacent building, sliding harmlessly away from her. Izuku was thrown off by the impact. He fell through the air, flailing. I have no landing strategy. He saw the ground rushing up. Slap! A hand touched his ankle. He stopped falling. He floated. Uraraka, face pale and vomiting, held her hand out. She released him gently onto the ground. Time's up! The siren wailed. Izuku lay on his back, staring at the dust-filled sky. His arm was burned. His staff was bent. He was exhausted. He started to laugh. A wheezing, breathless laugh. He had done it. He had fought a god and won, and he hadn't used a single percentage of one for all to do it. As the medical robots wheeled him away, he didn't see All Might watching from the observation room, his face pale, his hand clutching the railing so hard it bent. He didn't see the mixture of pride and horror in the hero's eyes. All Might turned to Principal Niza. He rejected me, you know. Niza sipped his tea, his beady eyes gleaming. I know. And looking at that performance, I believe he intends to reject the very concept of the impossible. Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes. He wasn't the symbol of peace. He was something else. He was the variable that no one saw coming. The path to heroism is not a straight line. For those with quirks, it is often a paved highway, maintained by genetics and societal praise. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a cliff face covered in jagged rocks, and he had decided to climb it without a rope. The 10 months leading up to the UA entrance exam were not a montage of inspiring music and sunsets. They were a blur of pain, soldering fumes, and the metallic taste of blood. Month 2, the body. The sign above the door was peeling, the kanji for Ironwood Dojo barely legible against the weathered wood. It wasn't a fancy gym in the city center. It was a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Muzurifu, smelling of sweat and stale incense. Again, the command was gruff, spoken by a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. Master Satu, no relation to the sugar hero, was 70 years old, quirkless, and terrifying. Izuku lay on the mat, his chest heaving. His arms trembled so violently he couldn't push himself up. I can't. The villain doesn't care, Satu barked, slapping a bamboo cane against his own leg. The villain doesn't care that you're tired. The villain doesn't care that you have no powers. If you stay down you die. Get up. Izuku gritted his teeth. He dug his fingers into the tatami mats. He forced his screaming muscles to obey. He pushed. He stood up. Good, Satu grunted. Your stance is sloppy. Your center of gravity is too high. You fight like you expect to be hit. I'm used to being hit, Izuku wheezed, wiping sweat from his eyes. That is why you lose, the old man said, circling him. You anticipate the pain. You accept it before it arrives. A quirkless fighter cannot afford to trade blows. We do not tank hits, boy. We divert them. We evade. We strike the eyes, the throat, the joints. We fight dirty because the world fights unfair. Satu lunged. It wasn't fast, but it was precise. Izuku tried to block, raising his arms in the X formation he'd seen All Might use on TV. Satu's hand snaked through the guard, tapping Izuku sharply on the solar plexus. Izuku crumpled, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Useless, Satu spat. That X block relies on having arms as thick as tree trunks to absorb the impact. You have twigs. If you block a villain with a strength quirk like that, they will break your arms and hit your face with your own bones. Dodge. Deflect. Use their momentum. Izuku lay on the floor, the room spinning. He hated this. He hated how weak he felt. But he hated the alternative more. He thought of the rooftop. I cannot simply say you can become a hero. He thought of Bakugo. Pebble. Izuku rolled over and vomited bile into a bucket in the corner. He wiped his mouth. Teach me, Izuku rasped. Teach me how to break them. Sada smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Grab the mop. Clean that up. Then give me 50 push-ups on your knuckles. Month 5. The Mind and the Machine. The transition from physical conditioning to engineering was not a break. It was simply a different kind of exhaustion. Izuku sat in the center of his cleared-out bedroom. The floor was covered in schematics. He had moved on from simple notebooks. Now, he had blueprints pinned to the walls where All Might posters used to hang. He held a soldering iron in one hand and a magnifying glass in the other. The tensile strength of the grapple line is the bottleneck, he muttered to himself. Standard steel wire snaps at 400 pounds of dynamic load. If I swing from a height of 3 stories, the G-force multiplier. He scribbled a calculation on the floorboards in chalk. It snaps. I die. He needed carbon nanotubes. He needed high-grade polymer weaves. He needed money. His allowance was meager. His mother Inko supported him, but she thought he was building model planes. She didn't know he was building a survival kit. Izuku spent his weekends at the Dagoba beach, but not just to clean. He stripped copper wiring from abandoned appliances to sell at the recycling center. He cannibalized motors from washing machines. One rainy Tuesday, he was at the local library, buried under a stack of books on applied physics and support item legalities. You're reading the text on Article 14, Unauthorized Support Gear again. Izuku looked up. It wasn't Mei Hatsum this time. It was the librarian, a woman with a quirk that let her elongate her neck to peek over shelves. Oh. Yes, Izuku said, closing the book. Planning to be a lawyer? She asked kindly. Something like that, Izuku lied. He reopened the book to the marked page. Section 4, Paragraph B. In the event of a practical exam for hero licensing or academy entrance, examinees are generally prohibited from using support items unless they have a registered medical necessity or a specific quirk incompatibility waiver filed 3 months in advance. Izuku stared at the text. A waiver. If he applied for a waiver, he would have to declare himself quirkless. The moment he did that, the bias would kick in. UA prided itself on being open, but the grading algorithms were designed for quirks. If he asked for permission to bring a grapple gun, they might reject it as unfair advantage or simply tell him to apply to the support course. He couldn't risk the rejection. Loophole, he whispered, scanning the next page. Clause C. Items fashioned from the environment during the exam are considered improvisation and are permitted. Clause D. Standard clothing and accessories are permitted, provided they do not constitute military-grade weaponry. Izuku touched his belt. A utility belt was an accessory. A capture scarf was clothing. Flashbangs, strictly speaking, they were chemical compounds. He was walking a razor's edge. If he got caught, he was out. If he didn't bring them, he failed. He decided to take the risk. He would smuggle the components in. He would build the volatile parts on site if he had to. He would turn himself into a weapon, and dare them to disqualify him for being prepared. Month 8, The Shadow. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Izuku was eating breakfast, nursing a bruised shin from sparring, when the TV screen flashed with the breaking news banner. All Might's new partner? Izuku froze. His spoon hovered halfway to his mouth. The footage was shaky, taken from a helicopter. It showed a villain rampage in downtown Tokyo. A massive rock monster was tearing up the street. All Might was there, smiling, punching, but there was someone else, a blur of motion. A young man, maybe 18, wearing a costume that looked like a stylized muscular suit with a red cape. He phased through the villain's attack, popped up from the ground, and delivered a punch that cracked the villain's stone armor. Power! The young man shouted, posing alongside All Might. The text on the screen identified him, Lemillion, Mirio Togata, UA 3rd year. The commentator was breathless. Look at that synergy. It's like watching a younger All Might. Sources say Togata has been interning with the #1 hero for months. Is this the debut of a new sidekick? Or perhaps, a successor? Izuku dropped his spoon. It clattered loudly into the bowl. He stared at Mirio Togata's face. The boy was radiant. He had a smile that rivaled All Might's. He was big, strong, and confident. Izuku knew. He didn't need to be told. That was one for all. Or if it wasn't yet, it would be soon. That was the boy All Might had chosen after Izuku walked away. A cold, ugly feeling twisted in Izuku's gut. Jealousy. That could have been me. If he had said yes, he would be the one standing next to All Might. He would be the one with the power to shatter stone. He wouldn't have to scrounge for scrap metal. He wouldn't have to break his body just to reach baseline. Izuku? Inko's voice was soft. Are you okay? You look pale. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. He forced the feeling down. He strangled it. No, he told himself. If I had said yes, I would be a fake. Togata is real. He smiles like he means it. I would just be smiling to hide the fear. I'm fine, Mom, Izuku said, opening his eyes. They were dry. He looked strong. The world needs strong heroes, but it needs smart ones too. He stood up, leaving his breakfast unfinished. I'm going for a run. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran until the image of Mirio Togata was replaced by the schematic of a high-frequency sonic emitter. He ran until he remembered why he said no. He wasn't fighting for the title of Symbol of Peace. He was fighting for the right to exist. The post-exam, the waiting game, the week following the entrance exam was the longest of Izuku's life. He had done it. He had defeated the zero-pointer. He had saved Uraraka. He had destroyed the other robots with traps and tactical strikes. But doubt is a parasite. It eats you from the inside. Did they see the flashbangs? Did they see the grapple? Was the grapple technically a weapon? He paced his room. He replayed the exam over and over. Bakugo hadn't spoken to him since the exam. The blonde had looked at Izuku with a mixture of confusion and unbridled rage when he saw Izuku being wheeled away on a stretcher. Bakugo had passed with flying colors. Everyone knew that. But Izuku? The letter arrived on a Friday. Inko brought it to him, her hands trembling. It was the heavy, wax-sealed envelope of Yuehai. Do you want to open it alone? She asked. Yeah, Izuku said. He took the envelope. He went to his room, his workshop. He sat at his desk, pushing aside a half-assembled drone. He took a deep breath. He tore the seal. A metal disc slid out onto the desk. A hologram projector. Click. A beam of light shot up, coalescing into the figure of All Might. Izuku flinched. He hadn't expected this. I am here! All Might bellowed from the hologram. He was in his muscle form, wearing a yellow suit. As a projection, Izuku watched, his heart hammering against his ribs. Young Midoriya! All Might's voice was boisterous, but there was a flicker of something else in his digital eyes. Sadness? Pride? You surprised us all. Truly, to think the boy who walked away from me would walk straight into the fires of the practical exam. All Might leaned into the camera. I watched you. I saw you rush the zero-pointer. I saw you save that girl when others fled. It was the essence of heroism. It was magnificent. Izuku felt a lump form in his throat. He saw me, however. The music in the recording stopped. The camera angle shifted. All Might stopped smiling. He sighed, deflating slightly, though he kept the muscle form. UA High School prides itself on freedom, young Midoriya. But it is also an institution of rules. A screen appeared next to All Might's head. It showed a list of scores. Villain points, 28, pending disqualification. Rescue points, 60. Your actions saved young Uraraka. For that, the judges awarded you 60 rescue points. A hero saves people. That alone is a passing grade, Izuku gasped. 60 points? That was enough. He was in, but All Might continued, his voice heavy. The support department flagged your equipment. The screen changed. It showed a slow-motion replay of Izuku using the flashbang. Then the grapple. Then the magnetic charges. Article 14, Section B. Unregistered support items are prohibited in the Hero Course practical exam. We checked the registry, young Midoriya. You applied as quirkless. You did not file a waiver for equipment. You smuggled hazardous materials into the testing site. Izuku stopped breathing. The judges argued. Principal Nizu argued in your favor, citing your ingenuity. But the board was firm. To allow unregistered weaponry is to compromise the fairness of the exam for those who rely solely on their bodies. It sets a dangerous precedent. The red text stamped over the video feed, disqualified. Your villain points have been voided. Your combat score is 0. Izuku stared at the word 0. However, All Might's voice softened. We cannot ignore the rescue points. You saved a life. You have the spirit, young Midoriya, but you broke the rules. And a hero who breaks the rules without a license is a vigilante. All Might looked directly at the camera. We cannot accept you into the Department of Heroics, Class 1A. The liability is too great. The world fell away. Izuku felt numb. It was the rooftop all over again. No. You cannot be a hero, but UA does not waste potential. Based on your written exam scores, which were near perfect, and your demonstrated tactical aptitude, the text on the screen changed. Accepted. Department of General Education, Class 1C. You have a foot in the door, young Midoriya. All Might posed, giving a thumbs up that felt hollow. The path is not closed. The sports festival offers a chance for transfer. Show us you can win within the rules. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The hologram flickered and died. The room was silent. Izuku sat there for a long time. He had passed. And he had failed. He wasn't a hero. He was a general ed student. A civilian in the eyes of the school. Slowly, Izuku reached out and picked up the metal disc. He gripped it until his knuckles turned white. Rules, he whispered. His voice was shaking, but not with sadness. With anger. They didn't care that he had saved her. They cared that he had used the flashbang he built himself instead of shooting fire from his hands. They penalized him for being clever. Fine, Izuku said to the dark room. He stood up. He walked over to the wall where his blueprints hung. He grabbed a red marker. He circled the date of the sports festival. If you want me to play by the rules, Izuku hissed, then I'll learn every single one of them. And then I'll break them so hard you won't be able to disqualify me. The first day, the other side, the UA uniform was gray. It was stylish, professional, and prestigious. But as Izuku walked through the massive gates on the first day of school, he felt like he was wearing a warning label. He walked down the main hallway. He saw the massive door labeled 1A. He paused. He could hear voices inside. Take your feet off the desk. That was Ida. Huh? Who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes? That was Bakugo. Izuku's hand hovered over the door handle. He wanted to open it. He wanted to walk in and take the seat behind Bakugo and prove he belonged there. Wrong door. The voice was tired, deep, and dripping with apathy. Izuku jumped and turned around. Standing behind him was a boy with gravity-defying purple hair and bags under his eyes that looked like bruises. He wore the uniform slouching, his hands deep in his pockets. You're staring at the Hero Core store like a puppy outside a butcher shop, the boy drawled. Izuku straightened his tie. I wasn't staring. Sure, the boy said. He walked past Izuku, heading further down the hall. Come on. 1C is this way. Unless you plan on loitering until Eraserhead expels you. Izuku blinked. Eraserhead? The boy didn't answer. He just kept walking. Izuku followed. They walked past the massive Hero Course doors, past the support course workshops, where Izuku heard a familiar explosion and manic laughter, and finally arrived at a standard, unassuming door at the end of the corridor. 1C, General Education. The classroom was quiet. It lacked the buzzing energy of the Hero Course. The students here looked normal. Some looked bored. Some looked disappointed. Izuku took a seat near the back, by the window. The purple-haired boy sat at the desk next to him. I'm Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said, turning to him. The boy looked at him sideways. Hitoshi Shinso. You knew about Eraserhead, Izuku said, lowering his voice. The underground hero. Not many people know him. Shinso's eyes narrowed slightly. You a fanboy? I analyze heroes, Izuku corrected. Eraserhead is the homeroom teacher for 1A. He has a high expulsion rate. If you know him, that means you did your research. Shinso turned his body fully toward Izuku. I did. Didn't help. The entrance exam is rigged for flashiness. My quirk isn't flashy. Brainwashing, Izuku said. Shinso stiffened. How did you? I saw you at the exam site, Izuku lied smoothly. He hadn't. He had just deduced it from the way Shinso carried himself, guarded, careful with his words, and he had read the roster on the teacher's desk when he walked in. You control people when they answer you, right? Shinso looked away, a bitter expression crossing his face. Yeah. Great for a villain, useless for smashing robots. That's what the judges thought, anyway. It's not useless, Izuku said. Shinso scoffed. Save the pep talk. You're in Gen Ed too. We're the rejects. I took down the 0-pointer, Izuku said calmly. Shinso froze. The ambient chatter of the classroom seemed to fade. He looked back at Izuku, searching for the lie. What? I destroyed the 0-pointer. And 4 other robots. I saved a girl. Izuku opened his notebook, tapping the page with his pen. But I used equipment I built myself. They said it was cheating because I didn't have a waiver. So they voided my score. Shinso stared at him. He saw the scars on Izuku's hands. He saw the cold, calculating look in the green eyes that should have been innocent. You're quirkless, Shinso realized. It wasn't a question. I am, Izuku confirmed. And I'm going to transfer into the hero course. Shinso laughed. It was a dry, rusty sound. A quirkless kid and a villain quirk kid. We're quite a pair. You think they'll let us up? The sports festival, Izuku said. Article 9 of the school charter. Any student who places in the top 3 of the sports festival is eligible for immediate transfer consideration, overriding previous exam scores. Izuku held out his hand. I can't do it alone. I need a team for the cavalry battle. You need a way to use your quirk without getting hit. I have plans. Shinso looked at the hand. He looked at Izuku's face. For the first time, the tired look in his eyes lifted, replaced by a spark of intrigue. You're crazy, Shinso said. I'm determined, Izuku countered. Shinso shook his hand. Deal. But if you get bossy, I'm brainwashing you to walk into a wall. Fair enough. Lunch rush. The confrontation. The cafeteria was loud. Heroes in training ate alongside business students and support engineers. It was a microcosm of the society outside. Izuku and Shinso sat at a corner table. Izuku was dissecting his katsudon, muttering about nutritional density. Midoriya. The voice was sharp. Authoritative. Izuku stopped chewing. He looked up. Tenya Ida stood there, holding a tray. Behind him were Uraraka and, surprisingly, Bakugo. Ida-kun, Izuku said politely. I wish to apologize, Ida said stiffly. He chopped his hand in the air. During the exam orientation, I judged you for your muttering. I assumed you were not taking it seriously. However, I heard rumors that you engaged the 0-pointer to save a fellow examinee. Ida bowed deeply. It was a noble act. I misjudged your character. It was amazing. Uraraka chimed in, beaming. You were like whoosh and then boom. I wanted to thank you properly. I tried to give you some of my points, but President Mike said they couldn't do that. She frowned. But, why are you wearing a Gen Ed tie? You saved me. You should be in our class. Izuku placed his chopsticks down. He felt the eyes of the cafeteria on him. He felt Bakugo's glare burning a hole in his skull. I broke the rules, Izuku said quietly. I used unauthorized support gear. So I was disqualified. Ha! Bakugo stepped forward, slamming his hand on the table. I knew it. You cheated. You're just a trickster, Deku. Shinso bristled, about to speak, but Izuku raised a hand to stop him. Izuku looked up at Bakugo. I used the tools available to me, Kaken. Just like you use your sweat. Just like Ida uses his engines. It's not the same. Bakugo yelled, small explosions popping on his palms. Those are our powers. You're just playing dress-up with toys. You're lucky they didn't expel you for endangerment. Is that what you think? Izuku stood up. He picked up his tray. He stepped close to Bakugo. He was still shorter, still physically smaller, but the air around him was different now. It was dense. You have a nitroglycerin-like sweat secretion, Izuku said, his voice flat and clinical. It allows for powerful explosions, but it places massive strain on your forearms. If I were to use a non-Newtonian fluid gel to gum up your palms, the sweat wouldn't ignite properly. It would backfire. Bakugo blinked. What? And Izuku turned to the tall boy. Your engines stall if the radiator pipes on your legs are clogged. A simple expanding foam sprayed into the exhaust ports would render you immobile in seconds. Ida took a step back, covering his calves reflexively. And Izuku looked at the girl gently. You get nauseous if you overuse your gravity. Inner ear equilibrium disruption. A disorienting strobe light or a sonic frequency could incapacitate you before you even touched me. The table was silent. Shinso was grinning behind his hand. I don't have a quirk, Izuku said to the group. So I have to know yours. I have to know how you work, how you break, and how to stop you. He walked past Bakugo, his shoulder brushing against the blonde's. Enjoy the hero course, Izuku whispered. I'll see you at the sports festival. And when I do, don't expect me to fight fair. He walked away to the return rack. Shinso followed him, chuckling. You certainly know how to make friends. I don't need friends in the hero course, Izuku said, putting his tray on the belt. I need rivals. The workshop, an unexpected ally. School ended. Most Gen Ed students went to clubs or went home. Izuku went to the support department. He stood outside the massive blast doors of the development studio. He could hear drilling. He knocked. The door slid open. I told you, power loader, the explosion was calculated to be, oh. It's Servo Boy. Mei Hatsum stood there, covered in soot, her goggles askew. She grinned maniacally. Izuku Midoriya, Izuku corrected. Whatever. Did you see the news? I got in. Class 1H. I'm going to make so many babies. She grabbed his arm and pulled him inside. Come in. Come in. Did you build that drone? Did you fix the heat sink issue? I have a different problem, Izuku said, looking around the workshop. It was heaven. CNC machines, 3D printers, plasma cutters. Oh? Hatsum tilted her head. I'm in general ed, Izuku said. Because my gear wasn't registered. I need to register gear for the sports festival. But I can't just buy standard stuff. I need to build things that can beat the hero course. Hatsum's eyes widened. The crosshairs in her irises seemed to zoom in. You want to beat the hero course? She asked breathlessly. You want to use my babies to humiliate those pompous show-offs who think quirks are everything? I want to show the world that tech is just as strong as power, Izuku said. Hatsum squealed. It was a terrifying sound. She threw an arm around his shoulder. Partner. We are going to be best friends. I have ideas. Terrible, dangerous ideas. I have a jetpack that might explode. I have boots that crush concrete. I have a grapple hook that. I have the grapple hook designs, Izuku interrupted, pulling a crumpled blueprint from his pocket. But I need your help with the propellant mixture. Hatsum snatched the paper. She scanned it. Ooh. High pressure CO2. Boring. Let's use a solid fuel micro-rocket. Too volatile, Izuku countered. But if we use a hybrid system. They spent the next 4 hours arguing about physics. By the time Izuku left UA that evening, the sun was setting. He walked to the train station alone. His body was tired. His record was stained with a disqualification. He was in the wrong class, but he had a teammate in Shinso. He had an engineer in Hatsum. And he had a target. He pulled out his phone. He looked at the news feed. Another clip of All Might and Lemillion saving the day. Izuku turned the phone off. The road was hard. It was steep. It was unfair. Izuku smiled. Good, he said to the empty street. I like a challenge. The curriculum of the General Education Department, Class 1C, was designed to be aggressively adequate. It was a good education. The math was advanced, the literature was classic, and the history was comprehensive. But to Izuku Midoriya, who had spent the last 10 months preparing for war, it felt like being sedated. Turn to page 45, the history teacher, a man with a quirk that let him turn chalk into stone, droned. Today we will discuss the early legislative pushback against the Quirk Registration Act of 2130. Izuku sat in the back row, his posture perfect, his eyes fixed on the blackboard. To the casual observer, he was the model student, In reality, he wasn't there. His notebook, open on his desk, was not filled with notes on legislation. It was a chaotic spiderweb of diagrams titled UA's Security Grid, Node Analysis. Beside him, Hitoshi Shinso was asleep. Or at least, he was mastering the art of sleeping with his eyes open. The purple-haired boy had developed a profound apathy for anything that didn't involve getting into the hero course. Midoriya, Shinso whispered, his lips barely moving. Izuku didn't look over. He continued sketching a schematic of a pressure sensor. Yeah? You're doing that thing again. What thing? Vibrating. You look like you're about to phase through the desk. Izuku stopped. He glanced down at his hand. He was tapping his pen against the paper at a speed that would impress a woodpecker. He forced his hand to stop. Sorry, Izuku murmured. I'm just thinking. You're analyzing the structural integrity of the ceiling again, aren't you? The ventilation shafts, Izuku corrected softly. The airflow suggests a centralized HVAC system, which means if someone released a gas toxin in the basement, it would reach the third floor in approximately 4 minutes unless the dampers have a manual override. Shinso blinked slowly. You are terrifying. You know that, right? I'm prepared, Izuku countered. The bell rang. The sound was a release valve. The class shuffled out, moving toward the cafeteria or the courtyard. Izuku packed his bag with precise, efficient movements. Where are you going? Shinso asked, slinging his bag over his shoulder. Lunch? Support studio, Izuku said. Mei texted me. She says she has a breakthrough with the comms unit. Shinso sighed. You and the crazy gadget girl. I swear, you two are going to accidentally build a doomsday device. It's not a doomsday device, Izuku said, walking toward the door. It's a long-range, encrypted heads-up display with thermal overlay. But, if the battery overheats, it might be a small bomb. So, technically you're not wrong. Shinso shook his head. I'll save you a seat. Try not to blow up the school. No promises. The Devil's Workshop. The development studio of UA High was less of a classroom and more of a hazard zone. It smelled of ozone, burning plastic, and unwashed geniuses. Izuku walked in, ducking instinctively as a robotic claw swung overhead carrying a car engine. Servo boy. Mei Hatsum emerged from a pile of wires like a swamp monster rising from the depths. Her goggles were opaque with soot, and her dreadlocks were tied back with a strip of duct tape. Izuku, he corrected automatically, though he knew it was a losing battle. He set his bag down on a workbench that was relatively clear of explosives. You said the comms were ready? Ready? They're better than ready. They're singing. Mei grabbed a bulky headset from the table. It looked like a pair of construction earmuffs welded to a pair of tactical goggles. It was ugly, industrial, and beautiful. I swapped the copper wiring for a gold alloy mesh I scavenged from a broken server. Mei declared, shoving the headset into his chest. Transmission lag is down to 0.02 milliseconds, and I cracked the encryption key you gave me. Izuku's eyes widened. You cracked the UA public frequency? Public? Ha! I cracked the faculty frequency. Mei cackled, puffing out her chest. Power Loader tried to firewall me, but I routed the signal through the cafeteria's smart fridge. The network never saw it coming. Izuku looked at the headset. He ran his fingers over the rough metal casing. Technically, listening to the teacher's private comms was expulsion-worthy. It was illegal wiretapping. This is... Izuku started. Illegal? Mei offered. Efficient, Izuku finished. He put the headset on. The world turned green. A digital overlay flickered into existence. Text scrolled rapidly across his vision. System diagnostics. Battery life. Ambient temperature. Audio channel. UA_main_secure. Status. Silent. It works, Izuku whispered. He tapped the side of the headset. Can we integrate the camera feed? Way ahead of you, Mei said, typing furiously on a laptop connected to the headset by a thick cable. I'm piggybacking off the security cameras in the hallways. I can feed it directly to your retina display. Look! The view in Izuku's right eye shifted. He saw the hallway outside. He saw students walking. He saw President Mike grabbing a coffee from a vending machine. Incredible, Izuku breathed. I know, right? Mei leaned in, grinning. With this, you can see everything. No blind spots. No surprises. Izuku took the headset off. He looked at Mei. Why help me? This is risky. If we get caught, Mei shrugged, wiping grease onto her overalls. I want my babies to be used by the best. The Hero Chorus kids? They just want flash. They want jetpacks that sparkle. You want my babies to work. You respect the engineering. Besides, she lowered her goggles, looking him in the eye. You look at the world like a puzzle, servo boy. I look at machines like a puzzle. We're the same, Izuku smiled. It was genuine. Thanks, Mei. Don't thank me yet. The battery life is only 40 minutes. After that, it gets hot enough to fry an egg on your ear. The anomaly. The day continued. History turned into English with present Mike, who was surprisingly subdued when teaching grammar, which turned into modern literature. It was 12:45 p.m. Class 1A had left campus earlier that morning. Izuku knew this because he had analyzed the bus schedule. They were heading to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ, for rescue training. Izuku sat in the library during his free period. Shinso was napping in a beanbag chair nearby. Izuku had the headset on his lap, connected to his tablet. He was running a diagnostic loop, tweaking the audio filters to isolate background noise. Static. Izuku frowned. He adjusted the frequency. Static. That's weird, he muttered. UA's network was fiber optic backed by satellite. It didn't have static. It was crystal clear. He tapped the keyboard. He tried to ping the USJ server node. Request timed out. Izuku sat up straighter. Shinso. MMPH? Wake up. No. The USJ is offline. Shinso opened one eye. So? Maybe the Wi-Fi is down. It happens. Not at UA, Izuku said, his voice tightening. And not during a scheduled class with All Might. He typed faster. He tried to access the security cameras at the main gate. Clear. He tried to access the cameras in the main building. Clear. He tried to access the cameras at the USJ entrance. Black screen. Something's wrong, Izuku said. The cold feeling in his gut. The one he felt on the beach. The one he felt in the alleyway with the sludge villain. Was back. He put the headset on. Mei, he whispered into the mic. Mei, are you there? A crackle. I'm here. What's up? Did it overheat? I need you to run a trace on the USJ hardline, Izuku said, ignoring the librarian who shushed him. He lowered his voice. I'm getting a total blackout. Sensors, cameras, comms. It's like the facility dropped off the map. Hold on. The sound of furious typing filled his ear. Whoa. You're right. I'm seeing a massive signal jammer. It's not a malfunction. It's a targeted frequency flood. Someone is blocking the signal from the inside. Izuku's blood ran cold. A villain, he whispered. What? Shinso sat up fully now, sensing the shift in Izuku's demeanor. Someone is jamming the USJ, Izuku said, standing up. Class 1A is there. 13 is there. Eraserhead is there. And All Might? Shinso asked. Izuku paused. He remembered the news reports from earlier. All Might had resolved 3 incidents on his way to work. He had burned through his time limit. I don't think All Might is there, Izuku said, horror dawning on him. I think he's late. And if he's late, they're alone. Izuku grabbed his bag. Where are you going? Shinso hissed, grabbing his wrist. You can't just run out there. It's miles away. And if there are villains, you'll get killed. I have to tell the teachers, Izuku said. They won't believe you, Shinso countered. A Gen Ed student claiming the USJ is under attack based on illegal hacking? They'll detain you for questioning while 1A gets slaughtered. Izuku froze. Shinso was right. Protocol would slow them down. He needed proof. He needed eyes. I need to break in, Izuku said. Digitally. He sat back down. He opened his laptop. Mei, Izuku commanded, his voice changing. The stutter was gone. The hesitation was gone. This was the analyst. Can you bypass the jammer? Negative, Mei replied, sounding serious for the first time. It's a localized EMP field. But the hard lines. The underground cables for the fire suppression system. They're analog. They aren't connected to the main grid. but they have sensors. Can we piggyback a data stream on a pressure valve signal? That's insane. The bandwidth would be like 56K dial-up. I don't need 4K video, Izuku snapped, his fingers flying across the keys. I need a still image. I need to see what's happening. On it. Give me 30 seconds, Izuku waited. The seconds ticked by like hours. Shinso stood up and moved to the end of the book stack, acting as a lookout. Librarian is distracted. You're clear. Got it. Mei shouted in his ear. Patching it through to your screen, now. The screen flickered. Gray lines. Static. Then, an image formed. It was grainy, low resolution, and black and white. It was taken from a maintenance camera high in the dome of the USJ. Izuku gasped. The central plaza was a war zone. He saw the fountain. He saw dozens of figures swarming the area. He saw Aizawa, Eraserhead, fighting a massive crowd of villains alone. And in the center, a monster. A hulking, black-skinned creature with an exposed brain. It was holding something. Izuku zoomed in. The pixels sharpened. The monster was holding Aizawa by the head. And standing next to it was a man covered in hands. They're dying, Izuku whispered. He saw the students scattered. He saw the ship in the flood zone. He saw the fire zone. Shinso, look at this. Shinso looked at the screen. His face went pale. Holy, we have to alert the staff, Izuku said. Not the regular staff. We need Nizu. Why Nizu? Because Nizu is the only one who won't ask questions first, Izuku said. He's the only one who will see the logic before the rules. Izuku closed the laptop, shoving it into his bag. Cover me. Always, Shinso said. The principal's office. Running in the halls was prohibited. Izuku didn't run. He moved with a fast, fluid walk that ate up distance without drawing attention. He utilized the blind spots of the cameras he had memorized. He reached the heavy oak door of the principal's office. He didn't knock. He didn't wait. He picked the electronic lock using a magnetized decoding strip he had built in Mei's lab. It took 3 seconds. Click. The door swung open. Principal Nizu, the chimera of unknown origin, was sitting at his desk, pouring tea. He didn't look up. Breaking and entering, Nizu said pleasantly. A bold strategy for a general education student, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku stepped inside and closed the door. He was breathing hard, but his mind was ice. The USJ is under attack, Izuku said. Nizu paused, the teapot hovering midair. He turned his beady black eyes to Izuku. Explain. Izuku walked to the desk and slammed his laptop down. He spun it around. The alarm system has been bypassed, Izuku rattled off. The communications are jammed. Class 1A is cut off. Eraserhead is engaged in combat with approximately 50 villains. There is a bioengineered weapon on site capable of suppressing a pro-hero. He hit the key to refresh the image. The grainy photo appeared. It showed the Nomas slamming Aizawa into the concrete. Nizu stared at the image. The pleasant demeanor vanished instantly. The animal instinct flared. His fur stood on end. How did you acquire this? Nizu asked, his voice dangerous. I hacked the fire suppression subgrid, Izuku admitted. I noticed a signal blackout during my free period. I investigated. You broke school rules. You violated federal cybersecurity laws. I don't care, Izuku said, meeting the principal's gaze. They need help. Now. All Might isn't there. Nizu looked at the boy. He saw the trembling hands, but the steady eyes. He saw the intellect that had bypassed UA's defenses in minutes. Nizu pressed a large red button under his desk. Emergency protocol, level red. Sirens began to wail across the entire campus. It wasn't the drill alarm. It was the war alarm. I have alerted all available staff, Nizu said, standing up on his chair. All Might is in the teacher's lounge, recovering. He will move first. The others will follow. 13 is likely incapacitated, Izuku added, analyzing the image. The villain with the mist. He's a warper. He separated the students. You need heroes with mobility and area control. Snipe. Cementos. Ectoplasm. Nizu smiled. It was a sharp, predatory smile. You are giving orders to the principal? I'm giving you tactical assessment, Izuku corrected. Stay here, Niza commanded. Do not leave this room. We will discuss your methodology when the dust settles. Niza hopped off his chair and scurried into a hidden vent system. Izuku was left alone in the office. The sirens wailed outside. He sank into the chair opposite the desk. His adrenaline crashed. His hands shook violently. He pulled up the feed again. He watched as the pixels shifted. The door of the USJ burst open. A blur of yellow and blue. All Might. He made it, Izuku whispered. He watched the battle unfold in grainy silence. He saw the shockwaves ripple through the water zone. He saw the Noma clash with All Might. It was a clash of titans. Even on a low-res screen, the power was terrifying. But Izuku saw something else. He saw the mist villain trying to flank. He saw the hand villain, Shigaraki, reaching for the students. Izuku tapped his earpiece. May? Are you still on the line? I'm here. Holy crap, the whole school is freaking out. What did you do? May, can you access the USJPA system? The speakers? The audio lines are cut, Izuku. I told you, not the digital lines, Izuku said, his mind racing. The emergency broadcast system. It's hardwired. Analog. Like the cameras. Maybe, but why? I need to distract them, Izuku said. All Might is fighting the big one. But the others, they're targeting the kids. Okay, I'm patching you in. It's gonna be static heavy, but it might work. Izuku watched the screen. He saw Shigaraki running toward Azui and Mineta. All Might was pinned by the Nomu. Izuku took a deep breath. He leaned into the mic. He didn't scream. He didn't yell smash. He pitched his voice low, cold, and distorted. System alert, Izuku spoke, mimicking the automated voice of the facility. Ventilation failure. Halon gas release in sectors 1, 2, and 3 imminent. Lethal concentration. Evacuate immediately. On the screen, Shigaraki paused. He looked up at the ceiling. It was a lie. There was no halon gas, but for a villain who planned everything, a sudden environmental hazard was a variable he hadn't accounted for. Shigaraki hesitated. He scratched his neck. Cheater. Shigaraki's lips moved, Izuku imagined. That 1 second of hesitation was enough. Bang! A bullet struck Shigaraki in the hand. Snipe had arrived. The pros poured in. Ida, who had run for help in cannon, but here the teachers arrived earlier thanks to Izuku, was safe. The villains retreated. The warp gate opened. They fled. The feed cut to static. Izuku slumped back in the chair. Game over, he whispered. The aftermath. The sun was setting by the time the police arrived at UA. Izuku was still in the principal's office. He hadn't moved. He had watched the news reports. Villain attack at UA. All Might victorious but injured. Students safe. The door opened. It wasn't Nizu. It was a man in a trench coat and a hat. Detective Tsukachi. And behind him, a very bandaged, very angry Aizawa. Izuku stood up. Is everyone okay? Aizawa stared at him. One of his eyes was swollen shut, the other bloodshot. His arm was in a sling. They're alive, Aizawa grunted. Thanks to the early warning. We got there 5 minutes faster than we would have if Ida had run all the way back. Tsukachi stepped forward. I'm Detective Tsukachi. Principal Niza tells me you're the one who tripped the alarm. Yes, sir, Izuku said. And you did it by hacking into a federal security system, accessing classified surveillance feeds, and impersonating an automated safety protocol? Yes, sir, Tsukachi sighed. He took off his hat. Kid, do you have any idea how many laws you broke? 17, Izuku answered instantly. Including the Cyberterrorism Prevention Act of 2145. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. He counted. I had to know the cost, Izuku said. He looked at Aizawa. If I didn't break those laws, you would be dead. And Azuri would be dead. And probably All Might too. The room went silent. He's right, Niza's voice came from the vent. The principal popped out, landing on his desk. He looked pristine, sipping a fresh cup of tea. Legally, Mr. Midoriya is a criminal, Niza chirped. However, under the Good Samaritan laws regarding quirk usage, or in this case, intellect usage, in life or death scenarios, there is leeway. Niza looked at Tsukachi. UA will not be pressing charges. In fact, we will be classifying his involvement. As far as the press is concerned, our censors worked perfectly. Tsukachi rubbed his temples. You're lucky, kid. If this gets out, you'll never get a government job. I don't want a government job, Izuku said. I want to be a hero. Tsukachi looked at the boy. Quirkless. Small. But with eyes that had seen the battlefield from a laptop screen and didn't blink. Fine, Tsukachi said. I'll bury the report. But don't make a habit of it. The detective left. Now it was just Nizu, Aizawa, and Izuku. Aizawa looked at Izuku. You're the kid from the entrance exam. The one who jammed the robot. Yes, sir. You're in general ed. Yes, sir. Aizawa limped forward. He stopped in front of Izuku. He towered over him. You have zero combat potential, Aizawa said bluntly. You're frail. You panic. You rely on toys. Izuku flinched. But Aizawa continued. You saw the jamming signal when no one else did. You identified the priority targets. You bought us time with a lie. Aizawa narrowed his good eye. Logic saves more lives than muscles. You're not hero material yet, Midoriya. But you're not useless. Aizawa turned and shuffled out of the room. Don't let it go to your head. If you hack my class again, I'll expel you myself. The door closed. Nizu clapped his paws together. Well, that went better than expected. Eraserhead usually hates everyone. Principal Nizu, Izuku said, his voice trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fully gone. Am I in trouble? Trouble? Oh, certainly, Nizu smiled. You are on probation. You will have detention for a month. And your internet access will be monitored. Izuku looked down. I understand. However, Nizu said, his eyes gleaming with a manic intelligence that matched Meihatsume's. I am also assigning you a special project. Nizu pulled a chess board out from his desk drawer. He placed a pawn on the board. You play the game differently, Mr. Midoriya. You don't look at the board. You look at the mechanics of the game itself. You see the code. Nizu gestured to the chair. Sit. Let's play. I want to see how your mind works when you're not saving lives. If you can beat me, or at least survive 20 moves, we might discuss your transfer prospects. Izuku looked at the board. He looked at Nizu. He sat down. White or black? Izuku asked. I always play white, Nizu said. I like to make the first move. Izuku reached for a black pawn. And I like to counterattack. The fallout. The next day, UA was a fortress. The media swarmed the gates. Inside Class 1C, the atmosphere was normal. No one knew what Izuku had done. To them, he was just the quiet kid who liked to mutter. Shinso leaned over. You're alive. Barely, Izuku whispered. Detention for a month. Did you save them? Yeah. We did, Shinso smirked. We? Mei helped, Izuku said. She hacked the PA system. You guys are insane, Shinso said, shaking his head. But there was respect in his voice. So what now? Now? Izuku pulled out his notebook. He opened a new page. Subject, The League of Villains. Leader, Shigaraki Tamura. Hand villain. Quirk, decay, touch-based. Weakness, long-range combat. Snipers. Speed. Weapon, Nomu. Quirk, shock absorption/regeneration. Weakness, overwhelming force, all might. Or joint severance? Cellular degeneration acid? Izuku looked at the page. Now, Izuku said, we prepare for the sports festival. Because if villains can break into UA, then being in general ed isn't safe. I need to be in the hero course. I need access to better training. He looked at Shinso. We're going to win, Shinso. We're going to destroy Class 1A. Shinso grinned. Now you're speaking my language. Meanwhile, in the faculty lounge, All Might sat on the sofa, nursing a cup of tea. He was in his small form, looking more skeletal than usual. The boy, All Might said. Midoriya. He was the one? He was, Nizu confirmed, stirring his own tea. He acted as our eyes and ears. All Might looked at his hands. He rejected my power because he wanted to prove he could do it himself. Yesterday, he proved it. He did, Aizawa muttered from his corner, wrapped in bandages like a mummy. He's reckless. Arrogant. But he's got a brain. Unlike some of my students who just ran in blindly. He reminds me of you, Aizawa, Midnight teased. Don't be disgusting, Aizawa snapped. He reminds me of me, Nisa said, smiling terrifyingly. And that, my dear colleagues, is why I am taking him under my personal tutelage. The teachers froze. You! President Mike squawked. You haven't taken a student in years. The world is changing, Nisa said, looking out the window. All might is fading. We need a symbol of peace, yes. Young Togata is shaping up to be that. Nisa tapped his temple. But peace is fragile. To maintain it, we don't just need a symbol. We need a safeguard. We need someone who can see the cracks before the wall breaks. Nisa looked at the file on the table. Izuka's student ID photo stared back.